This is my 2015 Kawasaki Mule Pro FXT, purchased new approximately 7 years ago, and it's got 1,048 miles on it, 361 hours, and the coolant's never been changed. So I went to the owner's manual to look how often that should be done. It says every 2 years, and it should be performed by the dealership or somebody that's equally as competent. So I ordered the service manual online, and we're going to walk you through on exactly what it takes to change the coolant on a Kawasaki Mule Pro FXT. The first step in changing the coolant is to tilt up the cargo bed. So I start out on the passenger side, unlatch the seat. Then I come around to the driver's side, or the left side, unlatch this side. Grab the back of the seat. Here, there's a handle. It says use the hand grip to lift the rear seat. You tilt the seat all the way forward. Then we walk back over to the passenger side. And as you come to the passenger side, you'll see a handle here. You lift the bed up. On the passenger side underneath, you're going to see a small metal handle. This is just a safety feature to keep the bed up. You open it, lift up, and put it right there, and the bed is now up and in the lock position. The next step is to remove the front cover. You do that by tilting these keys counterclockwise until you feel them loose. Lift up, give it a little bit of a tug, and then the cover comes off. The next step in the service manual is to remove the front drain bolts and let the radiator drain, but there's a cover underneath that prevents you from getting at those. It's all Phillips screws, but some of the screws are tight, so to speed up the process of the video, I went ahead under there and loosened someone with like an impact type driver like this. You put it on the screw and just tap it and it'll loosen the screws. But for now, if you bring yourself underneath the heater, I'll show you the rest of the screws. They hold the skid plate on. We're gonna lower that. Once you get all the screws out, just the front part of the skid plate, you're gonna pull it out and slide it out of the way. Okay, working your way from the front of the vehicle back towards the back after you just remove this cover, you're gonna see one drain bolt right here and the other drain bolt right here, both on the lines with the hoses connected to them. You can see the hoses connected. Those are the drain bolts, which is the next step in the process of draining the coolant. Okay, we're gonna remove one side at a time just because our pan isn't big enough to cover both sides. So we're gonna remove the first bolt and be careful not to lose the washer that comes on it, which is the gasket. And there comes some coolant. Still looks green even after all this time. And the drain bolts on the front are 10 millimeter. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and just leave that other side drain, and we're gonna go ahead and pull this side and put it in a separate container. Both of these are fairly easy to get off. I would suggest maybe putting some anti-seize on the thread, so in the future, if you go to get them out, they'll come out equally as easy, but oops, we'll get that one on. After you've got the drain bolts removed from down below, you come up top to remove the radiator cap. You turn it once and it'll stop. Push down again and turn it a little bit farther. And it should, with a little bit of effort, come right off. And then once you get the air into there, you'll see below that the drain bolts are a lot easier draining the coolant. The next step is going to be to remove the water pipe and thermostat housing air bleed bolts to completely drain it. Those are 8 millimeter. The water pipe bolt is the opposite side, which would be the passenger side. Both of these have washers on that you have to be careful of that you don't damage so you can reuse. They suggest replacing them, but if you've only taken it apart once or twice, there's really no need to do that. The next step is to remove the overflow tank cap and suction out any remaining antifreeze that might be in the reserve tank. Okay, there was no additional coolant in my reservoir tank, so which leads me to believe that it may have been a little bit low. But you use either a syringe or some kind of suitable suction device like a siphon hose or something to put down in there and drain it completely. Okay, the next step is to replace the drain bolts. I went ahead and put a little bit of anti-seize, as I said earlier. Both of these get tightened to 80 inch-pounds. Big difference between inch-pounds and foot-pounds. So 80 foot-pounds, you'd probably snap these bolts off. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put those on. I've got my torque wrench set to 80 inch-pounds. We'll put it on there, tighten it until we hear it click. There, put it on this one till we hear it click, and we're good. Okay, the coolant that I'm gonna put in here is a 50-50 mix, which what the factory calls for. I bought this at a local auto parts store. It's safe for aluminum engines, and you want it to say it contains ethylene glycol. So the total capacity after draining it is 6.2 quarts. So you've got roughly 1.5 gallons that you're gonna have to put in it. We're gonna start by filling the radiator up to the neck. Okay, I took a small little funnel and wiped it down to make sure there's no contaminants that are gonna enter the cooling system. I'm gonna put that in the neck of the radiator and I'm gonna start filling it up. As I'm filling it up in the radiator in the front, I'm checking these air bleed bolts in the back because as I'm pouring it in, there's gonna be some air coming out and we wanna make sure we purge the system of all the air. So as we're pouring it in the front, I'll let you watch the back.
Spewing. Yep.
Okay, so I filled the radiator up to the neck and put these air bleed bolts back in gently in the back, and I'm gonna just ever so slightly see. I think all the air is out because I put them in loose and I don't hear any air. So I'm gonna tighten these back up on the water pipe, which is the opposite side, and this thermostat housing. They get tightened to 78 inch-pounds according to the service manual. And again, don't mistake that for foot-pounds, it's inch-pounds, it's way lighter. So we're gonna tighten those up right now. Okay, we're gonna go to the other side now. Put this on the water pipe and tighten that to 78 inch-pounds as well. There we go. Next, we reinstall the radiator cap, making sure it goes all the way around until it's tight. Next, we're going to fill up the reservoir tank to the top line, which it'll have an F there, obviously, for full. Okay. Then we replace the reservoir cap. Next, we're going to start the engine until the coolant fan turns on. Then we're going to shut the engine off, let the engine cool, and recheck the coolant level. Okay, after the engine's run for a while, the fan came on, took probably 10 minutes. The engine's cooling down now. I came over, I look at the reservoir, and it's still on the full mark, which is what it's supposed to be. So now I'm gonna start putting everything back together. As far as the hood, you put the hood back on, it's pretty self-explanatory. Tilt the bed back down, put the cover back on underneath. I suggest before you put the cover back on underneath or the back, tilt the back down, just double check to make sure there's no leaks. And other than that, I think we're good to go. Probably the next time I ride it, I'll double check and just make sure that that level hasn't dropped down. It took about 6 quarts of fluid, roughly what it said it should. And from there, I think we're good to go. Thanks, guys. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button to see more outdoor instructional videos.